Hello there. Welcome to Tuck and Cash. I hope you are doing well. So, as you can see here, the time has finally come. We're ready to rate and rank all the birds from Wingspan European expansion. And of course, for this great task, I have to ask my special guest to join me. So, we have Flan from Winging It. How are you doing, Flan?
Hello. Yep, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on again. And like you say, I think it's about time we
Right.
go through this list. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think like since the European expansion came out, we have played quite a few games, I must say, of the European expansion. So I feel like we have a pretty good idea where each bird stands. So this is a good timing. All right, so this is gonna be pretty similar to the previous tier list that we did for the base game. So we have tier S, A, B, C, D, and F. So obviously for S we have the overpower bird, and then for tier A, those are the star of Wingspan. If you see this bird in the tray, you must grab them in early game. And then B tier, I mean, if you don't have A tier, B tier are still as good that, you still want to look out for in the tray in the early game. And what about C tier, Flan?
Well, C tier, I mean, those are the ones where they're okay. If you can get them early on, if you really can't find those A or B tier birds, you probably grab them from the tray. But obviously, they're the kind of birds, yeah, if you grab them from the deck, maybe you play them, maybe you're going to discard them. And then, yeah, D tier, kind of just a step below C,
Yeah.
and even slightly worse, if you're really, really desperate, you can't find
Yeah.
anything that you want to look to play, maybe grab that. But otherwise, it's probably going to be a tuck or a discard. And then F, of course, probably needs no real introduction. Those are really the kind of birds that you're not going to look to play in the early game.
Right, don't even bother with F. But and another very important thing for us to clarify is that the tier list that we are making today is really focused on the early game potential and value of each bird. So you hear saying a lot like throughout the video like how good these birds are in early game. Are you ready, Flan?
I am ready. Let's get stuck into this.
All right, let's jump straight to it. The first bird here we have the auto and go. So you draw two cards, tuck one and keep the other. I mean, this looks like a tier A bird to me.
Yeah, I've got this one at 80 as well. I don't think you can really have too much debate about it. I mean, it's exactly the kind of power you want early on. You get tucks for points, and you're drawing extra cards as well. So, yeah, really good early game accelerator.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this before too because of the tugging. It also kind of expand the window that you can play this bird because you can make this, you can make points like doing card drawing late game as well. So solid tier A.
Definitely.
All right. So next we have the black red star. We have a teal power that lay eggs at the end of the round. So what do you think?
Yeah, this is kind of a tricky one. I've got this in F tier
Oh, all the
purely
way.
purely because it's just so expensive. I mean, three
Right.
different foods. Obviously it's got a nice power. It's the kind where if you can really make use of that, obviously playing it in round one, you get some free eggs, and eggs are always useful early in the game. But you do have to wait till the end of the round. So, yeah, kind of a tricky one. I think it's either D or F for me, but I've gone out early. I've gone harsh. Second bird in, straight into F tier.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. Thinking about early game, like, do I really want to invest three food on this
Mm,
bird that maybe get one or two eggs? It's really kind of hard to justify. Maybe in really specific situation, you have abundant of food, you can justify
right.
it. But most of the time, maybe not. So yeah, early game, I think it really doesn't have that much utility. Um, all right, coming up next, we have the Black Woodpecker. So this part allows you to gain all grub in the bird feeder when you activate it. I think this has a lot of potential, like especially when the bird feeder, really work out in your favor. Like those extra grub that you can get can really accelerate the game. Um, I mean, based on the food cost, I would say definitely not tier A because it's still quite expensive, but I want to say somewhere between tier B or tier C. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this was quite difficult. I mean, I have got this one in B tier. I
Okay.
think for exactly the reasons you said. The food cost is probably what's really stopping it from being in tier A. Two
Mm-hmm.
worms and obviously the cherry as well. So you're not going to get it down straight away. You need that extra turn. And as well, you're gaining food or you're gaining the worm that you then could potentially be gaining with this power when you then go and activate it. So it is highly dependent on the bird feeder, but the ceiling for this is just so high.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you can get 3 or 4 food potentially in the early game from a single activation, that's really, really good. So yeah, I've got this one in beta.
All right. I have a feeling it would be like at the bottom of B tier.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
depending on what bird's coming up next, we might move it like maybe top of C tier. We'll see. All right. Next we have the black-headed gull. Oh, this is a spicy one. That you steal food from other opponent.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but again, as with Order Goal, I've got this one in A tier.
Yeah.
And probably if there was an A plus tier, I'd put it in that. So definitely towards the upper end. But yeah, this is an absolute nightmare to play against.
Yep.
When your opponent plays this turn 1 or turn 2, it's just really frustrating to deal
Yep.
with. And of course, the power itself, if you play it, you're getting cards, you're getting food at the same time. So yeah, really, really strong.
Yeah, it's so annoying. Probably one of the most hated bird in Wingspan to play
Definitely.
against. Yeah,
Yeah.
the getting free food, like at the same time disrupting your opponent tempo is just so good. So what did you say is better than the Alduin's goal?
I would say early on,
Mm-hmm.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, they're both kind of similar, right? They're both
Yeah.
two food, different foods, so that, the ease of playing them is about the same.
Yeah.
Autumn's Goal get you extra cards, Black-Headed Goal gets you extra foods.
Right.
I think, if you're getting food and cards, those two different resources at the same time, that's really, really strong, particularly in that first round. You can save
Right.
yourself turns going to the bird feeder. So obviously, depends what food your opponent's got, if that's going to fit for you, but yeah, I'd put it slightly ahead of the goal.
Yeah, I agree. Getting food in wetland is always big, so I can agree with that.
Yep.
All right, next we have the Blacktail Godwit. So allow you to draw a bonus card, and then you also get to draw one bird card. So this is interesting. So definitely expensive for when play power. I think when we did the base game tier list, a lot of birds that's similar to the Godwit fall into tier D. So it's kind of like, in desperate situation, if you have no better bird to play in early game, these are pretty good. But I'm thinking, like, can we make an argument to move Godwit to tier C, because you also get to draw cards. So in some way, you get card, which is a resource rather than just bonus card.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a case for tier C here.
Yeah.
I mean, the food cost is a little bit annoying. Again, we're going to say this time and time again throughout this video, but when you've got two of the same food costs in a bird, it does just make it that little bit harder to play in the
Mm-hmm.
early game to have that extra turn getting food. But yeah, I think like you said, you get to draw 3 cards to keep one. So if there's something in the tray you want, you can grab that, or you can just start to dig through the deck. And of course, you get a bonus card, and when you see those early on in the game, you give yourself plenty of time throughout the rest of the game to work towards that. So yeah, I think there's definitely a case to put this in C tier.
Right. Yeah, I think the extra card that you gain really make the difference.
Definitely.
All right, next we have the Black-throated Diver. So you get to discard the tray and draw one face-up card.
Yeah. So this again is a little bit of a difficult one.
Yeah.
I think it probably straddles the line between B and C.
Whoa.
I've got it in B tier. I think the power is so strong. I
Yeah?
think what really holds this back is the food costs.
Right.
2 fish.
Mm-hmm.
There's not always a fish in the feeder, so
Yeah.
sometimes you get to overpay
Mm-hmm.
or spend those extra turns getting food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only got 1 egg space, so once you've played it, you need to play another bird before you can start laying eggs, and then discard off it to get extra cards. So
Right.
it's a really good power.
Right.
But yeah, there's just a couple of things I think holding this one back.
Yeah, I think I really want to make a case for putting it in B. Again, I feel like in Wingspan, card draw and card cycle is so important, and being able to see 3 cards every time you activate it is a pretty substantial advantage. So I think it belongs to B tier.
Yeah, I mean, I have got it on B tier on my list,
Okay.
kind of maybe towards the lower end, but yeah, I think B tier is a fair place to put it.
All right. That's very good. All right. Next, we have the blue throat. So it's kind of like the hummingbird where every player gets to gain one food, but you get to pick what food. Again, this is a very interesting one. You know, it's expensive, but the power is really strong. And at the same time, you're also getting 7 points. And after so many games, I've just seen so many utility of this bird, either in early game or late game. Because of the 7 point, you can very justifiably play this bird in late game as well. So, I want to say this must be at least at the bottom of A tier. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I've got this in A2 as well, and I
Right.
think maybe when I started playing the European expansion, I might have put this a little bit lower just because it is so expensive and obviously 7 points, but that's not always what you look for in the early game. But
Yeah.
like you said, just having played a bunch of games with this, if it's in the tray, it's normally going to get picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, 3 different food, really easy to keep that in your starting hand and play
Right.
this. Loads of egg spaces. It can go in the grasslands or the wetlands. So yeah, really flexible, really strong power.
Yeah. Really great value. All right. So what do we have next? Oh, this is a highly debatable one. We have the Bonelli's Eagle. Let's hear from you, Flan.
Oh, why do I have to be going first for this one? So, um, yeah, I have got this one in S tier. Now,
Oh
it's not
wow.
it's not the kind of bird you play early on. So everything we said at the start about early game tempo and acceleration goes out the window. But
Wow.
yeah, this is the kind of bird. And again, this has just come from experience playing games on the server, tournament games.
Yeah.
If this is in the tray at the start, it is getting picked up. No questions asked.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what you've got in your starting hand. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do with that first round. If it's in the tray, you pick it up because it's just such a huge point bomb to be playing later in the game.
Right. I hear you. I mean, Banal's Eagle, we have many of us have many experience with this bird. It really make or break the game. Like, so many game that were just decided by the Banal's Eagle. So in that sense, in the overall sense, like Banal's Eagle definitely in the S tier. Um, but you have to understand that now you're putting it in the same rank as Killdeer and Raven. So how do you think about that in that context? Are they equal in that
It's
sense?
dangerous. It's
Yeah.
dangerous. I think it's probably like the black-headed gull. If there was that A+ tier and kind of similar, I guess maybe to the wood duck, like when we talked about that in the previous tier
Yeah.
list. So obviously this is its own sort of distinct tier list, but the idea is that we can look to combine this, like you said, with the base game tier list and kind of make comparisons there. So I don't know. I mean, I only kind of justify that purely based on the fact that, like you said, it's overpowered and it's game winning. You see so many games where it's decided just from the Benelli's Eagle,
Yeah.
and if it's there, people are going to grab it. But I think if there's going to be any one bird maybe in this video that goes in S tier for me, it's that. So
Okay.
if it's not going there, we might be leaving that empty, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to this. But again, we have to think about it in the early game. Like, how lightly would you play Banal's Eagle in early game?
I mean, yeah, I'm not likely to play it, but if it's in the tray or if it's in my starting hand, I think 99% of the time it's getting picked up or it's getting kept in the starting hand. So
All right. Yeah. I think everybody knows how Banal's Eagle works. So
I
I
think I think it needs its own tier. I think
yeah.
it just needs its Benelli tier, and then we
Yeah.
don't have to worry about if it's in S or A.
Yeah. It need to be one of those like let's ban this bird kind of tier.
Definitely.
All right, let's move on. So next we have the bullfinch. So it lets you reset the bird feeder and gain either a cherry or a seed. Again, very flexible power, allow you to gain multiple food in early game, and it's easy to play because it's 2 different food. I mean, I'll be happy to start with this bird in my hand. Um, so I want to put it in bottom of tier A. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got this one in A tier. I think, like you said, you're happy to see this in your starting hand. Again, 2 different foods.
Hmm.
Play it straight away in your forest. Start getting foods. You reset the bird feeder, you're pretty likely to get either a seed or a cherry, and they're both normally pretty useful foods to get early on. So
Yeah.
yeah, no complaints from me. Straight in tier A.
All right, next we have the carrion crow. So it's the teal power that allow you to cache based on the number of predators.
Yeah, so this is quite a tricky one, I think. Obviously, like you said, you're caching and you're scoring points, so you're not actually generating resources, which is normally what you kind of look for early game. So I've probably got this one in D tier, I think. I think the
Okay.
only thing really that saves it is that it can go in the wetlands. It's
Yeah.
two different foods, so it's one of those where if you're absolutely desperate, you've not got any other wetland birds, it works, and you can maybe look to score some points from it as the game goes on. But yeah, not really the kind of super reliable wetland bird you'd look for.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. More of a desperate situation for the wetland if you don't have other birds. So yeah, D tier for sure. All right, so let's see, what do we have next? All right, next we have the Sadie's Wobbler. So it's another teal powers. This is an interesting one. So it lets you to count double towards end of round goal. So I think this has been discussed quite a few times before. So it ended up there's actually not that many end of round goal that this power apply to. It's mostly like birds in wetland or bird with specific nest type. So again, I feel like this give me similar vibe with carrion crow, whereas like in desperate situation, if you need a bird in a wetland, I would play this, but otherwise I'll be pretty upset if this is my wetland bird. So I think it's going to D tier.
Yeah, I've got this one in D tier as well. Like you said, it's not something you're going to be
Yeah.
excited to see if you need it at a pinch. And sometimes those end of round goals line up, so you might look to it a bit more favorably.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely kind of desperate situation there. If you haven't got any other wetland birds, then you go for this.
All right. Next, we have the coated. So you get to gain one seed from the supply every time you activate it.
Yep. So I've got this one in A tier,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think similarly to the bullfinch, two different foods. You're getting food. I mean, this time it's guaranteed, right? So you're
Yeah.
gaining from the supply, you're caching, but then obviously you can come back later and spend that cash food if you want. And I think particularly early game, if you want to be playing extra birds,
Mm-hmm.
this is a great way of getting guaranteed food and then using that to get those birds down. So yeah, really strong power.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the bird that, I totally undervalue when I
Mm,
started playing European expansion, looking at this power, I
yep.
was like, yeah, it's okay, similar to some of the base game, but once you really play, you realize, wow, the flexibility and the guarantee seed is really good. So
Yeah.
tier A for sure. All right, what do we have next? Ooh, we have the common blackbird. So this is a when-play bird that plays sideways in the forest. Um, yeah, again, I think the promise is kind of like you play sideways, so you unlock two food, but it's just so expensive. Like I felt like every time where I have to settle with playing this bird, I just never have a good game. So this is like teetering between like tier D or tier F. I'm interested to hear what do you think.
Oh, I mean, I've got this in F. I think
Oh
really,
wow.
there's not really any sort of debate for me. I think
Okay.
the only thing maybe saving it, obviously, it goes in the forest, like you said, get you a bit of extra food, but
Yeah,
it's just so expensive.
I
Two
know.
cherries. There's not always that extra cherry
Mm-hmm.
to kind of actually be able to play this. So yeah, I think I've only played this once
Yeah.
in the last 6 months or so since the expansion's been out. So
Yeah.
that for me kind of says all I need to know about this bird.
Yeah. I think we gotta at least put it in bottom of tier D because of some minimum utility in the
Mm,
forest. Or you think like don't even bother.
I just think if this is my only forest bird in my starting hand, I'm not going to keep it.
You're
And
not
if it's
gonna
in the
keep it?
tray,
Okay.
I'm still not going to pick it up. I'm going to keep digging. I'm going to look for something that's cheaper, something more flexible. I think there's just way more better options than this.
All right, fine. We'll put it at top of tier F here.
I can live with that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't played a lot of this bird too, and
No.
you really hate to play it. So, all right, no need for too much discussion over there.
Mm-mm.
All right, next we have the common buzzard. So it's a predator that you can play on top of another bird. So this is an interesting one. Again, I have run into quite a few situations where if I have no other option, I would play this bird, just paying like a rodent in
Mm.
either the forest or the wetland. So based on previous criteria, it's kind of in tier D for desperate situation. But I'm wondering, like, is the one food cost and flexible habitat good enough to make it into tier C?
It's a tricky one. I mean, I've got this one in D, I think,
Okay.
for kind of the same reasons you said. It's only really played in desperation.
Yeah.
And obviously, the Predator power itself, that's normally quite nice to use later in the game. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to hit a end of round goal or work for a bonus card and just get some extra points that way. But you're not really going to want to play on top of
Mm-hmm.
existing birds, so super early in the game. So, yeah, sometimes you might see us play, like you say, for one rodent, the flexibility just to get you started, but definitely only really see this in a real desperate situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think I really want to put in bottom of tier C again, just for the flexibility and one food cost. Like, I just feel like it's slightly better than like other bird where you have to invest two food. And again, imagine if you have like the right bonus card. Like, I think you can get some value off this bird.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably I would say like higher up in D tier than the two we've
Okay.
got there at the moment. But I
Yeah.
think I think there are going to be other birds that we come onto that kind of fit that
C
cheap
tier better.
C tier criteria where you might at least get some utility from the power. But obviously here it's just that when played, and I think if you are going to use it early game, you're not even getting any utility from that.
All right. I can live with that. All right. Moving on, so we have the common chaffinch. So it's a massive tuck bird that allow you to tuck cards in the forest or the grassland. Ooh, this is kind of a tricky one.
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably one of those that I was kind of just referring to that
Mm,
I would put in C tier where it's
yeah,
one food, you put it in your forest. You know, early game, you might not get a whole lot of use out of this power.
yeah.
'Cause you're probably not going to have loads of cards, but it's something. And it's kind of maybe not for a super desperate situation, but yeah, like I say, just one food, get it in the forest. You can get some tuck cards, or if you want extra foods, obviously
Mm-hmm.
you can start discarding when you choose to gain food. But really, this is one of those birds that I think later in the game you might more likely look to play it and sort of get the massive benefit from the tucking power.
Yeah, I agree. Like the power is quite strong, but it's really most of the game that I've played, it really shine when it's in the late game where you pivot from like maybe like a really strong wetland to like a
Mm.
grassland or a forest, or maybe you have killdeer that pair with chaffinch. Even then, it's not like a massive point scoring bird. So I think overall it will probably be in like a B tier, but in early game, like you say, like you won't get too much utility. It's not really the power that you want in early game. So I think C tier make a lot of sense.
Yep.
All right. Next, we have a very similar sounding bird, but I think it's gonna be a totally different tier. So we have the common shift shaft. Again, same power that allow you to massively tug, but this time it's either in the forest or the wetland. I would say this is definitely in A tier because of the wetland tugging potential here.
Yeah, no questions asked. I mean, I think this is
Yeah.
one where once you've had experience playing this, even probably
Yeah.
just once in a game, and you see the potential, yeah, it's exactly the kind of bird you want to keep in a starting hand. And again, I think if you're going first, you see this in the tray, and you've got another wetland bird, you're probably going to grab this and start setting something up. So yeah, a lot of potential with this one.
Yeah. I mean, there are just so many games that I play against Shift Shaft where you just feel so hopeless because
Mm.
once the engine is set up that it's
Yeah,
just so hard to catch up with the massive tugging, and they only cost one food. So yeah,
right.
definitely very potent birds here. And the thing is, like, it also have quite a big window to play as well. Like, if you set up a wetland, you accumulate cards, and even found it in like round two or round three, you can still catch up by tugging those cards. So very flexible.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have the common cuckoo. So it's a pink power that allows you to gain egg in between turn.
Yeah, so this is a tricky one. I mean, I think we had kind of similar
Yeah.
discussions, obviously, in the base game when we looked at these kind of pink powers. And I think the grassland ones, at least, did go in C tier. So I
Mm-hmm.
think for a start, an opening gambit, I'd put this in C tier.
Yeah.
I would say this is slightly better than the cowbirds from the base game because you have more flexibility over the nest type and it
Yeah.
can go in the forest. And so you get that sort of additional bird in the forest, maybe to extend it out and get a bit of extra food. But yeah, it is really difficult, I think, sometimes with these pink powers early game to make sure you've got the right nest type and also make sure that your opponent's going to lay eggs so you can get the benefit from it.
Right. Yeah, I think C tier is right, for the 2 food cost and early game, do you want to invest in two grub on this power? But at the same time, it can be your forest bird if you want to. But yeah. So would you say it's in the C tier?
I think so. I mean, I know,
Yeah.
I know we did get some comments last time about
Yeah.
how the cowbirds should probably be in B
I
tier.
think the 1 foot cowbird, I can see it.
Yeah,
Like I might move it later. Yeah. But
exactly. I think it's difficult. I think early game food is precious, but
mm-hmm.
so are eggs. So if you can get some free eggs, save yourself those turns. So you don't have to spend a turn laying eggs. You could spend extra turns getting cards or food. That can be really valuable. But it's just so situational. I think there's nothing worse than playing a pink power on turn 1 or turn 2, and then you see your opponent set up a forest engine or set up a wetland engine. I think particularly in the European expansion, there are so many other ways to score points that
Yeah.
aren't just laying eggs in the grass, and so the pink powers that get you free eggs maybe are slightly weakened in that sense. So yeah, I'm comfortable. I think putting this one in C tier.
All right. I think me too. All right, next we have the common golden eye. So you have a 2 power that allow you to gain eggs. So, similar. I want to say this is, for me, this is kind of like in C tier. This is like not the birds that you really want to play in early game, but in the right situation, you can get some utility, and then you can also use it as a bird in the forest and the wetland. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you just said.
Yeah,
I'd put it in C as well. I think it is so situational. If
yeah,
you can get some other cavity nest birds down, particularly some strong forest brown powers, I think
yeah,
the nuthatches and the chickadees, the colt we looked at earlier, kind of come to mind.
yeah.
That can get you some free eggs early on, which is good. 2 different foods, like you say, get your wetland started, get your forest started. So good flexibility. Not the kind of bird you'd always look for, but it can work in a pinch.
Yeah. Again, sometimes like those 1 or 2 free egg that you gain in early game can really accelerate, the rest of the
Yep.
game. So yeah, I think solid C tier. All right, next we have the common kingfisher, where you steal fish from another players.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say it. I think you know where this is going. This has to be F tier for me. I think
Okay.
it's so horrible to try and play
It
this
is
early game.
true.
2 fish, again, really, really difficult to get hold of. And you're not always going to be able to use the power. Stealing fish from other players, you can't be
Yeah.
certain they're going to have them. So I think if it's an end of round goal or multiple end of round goals that rely on eggs in a certain nest type, that's where this card shines because it's got those 5
Yeah.
egg spaces and a star nest. But yeah, for an early game bird, this is not the one.
Yeah, I don't even remember the last time I played this bird, and
No.
again, even late game is kind of questionable because of the 4 points. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just don't really shine this bird. Sorry. All right, next, oh, we have the common little bitten. So it allows you to draw 1 face-up card that can live in grassland. Oh, I have very mixed feeling about this bird. Like, like it feel like a good wetland starter because it's 2 different food costs and then you can gain extra card, but you just never feel good when you have to play this bird in the wetland to start. But it's not that bad. I kind of feel like it's the bottom of B tier just because of the fruit cost and the ability to gain extra card, but I'm interested to hear how do you feel?
Yeah, I think I had similar dilemmas to you.
Yeah.
And I have also got this one in B tier, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of somewhere between B and C.
Yeah.
Like you say, you can't guarantee that you're going to get actually the chance to
Right.
activate that power. Two food, it is at least two different food, but
Yeah.
you only get 2 points from that.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of much better powers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we even put in B tier when we looked at the base game. So certainly compared to those, it's not as good.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels, I would say, a step above. For example, the common golden eye, which again is a fish and a worm, and we put that in C tier. So I think just the option of being able to get extra cards, at
Yeah.
least with this one, I think puts it in B tier.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the tier list so far, it kind of makes sense, similar to the
Mhm.
woodpecker. Like, you're not
Yeah,
guaranteed to get warm, but that is potential. So,
exactly. Yeah.
all right. So, what do we have next? Ooh, this one. We have the core common moorhen that allows you to play extra bird in wetland when you activate it. Let's hear.
Let's hear. So
Let's
this
hear.
is a tricky one. I'm sure
Is it?
you more than anyone else have had experiences playing with this one, but I'm going to make a case to put it not in F tier, but at least in D tier, because I
Okay.
think I think it is, for example, a step above the common kingfisher we looked at just a few birds ago. It's really not the kind of bird you look for. Definitely, if
Mm-hmm.
it's in the tray, you're not going to pick it up. But I have had some really good games with this. I think
Mm-hmm.
it works better in higher player counts if there's a lot of food co-op going on. If
Yeah.
you can build up a strong forest where you're getting 4 or 5 food a turn,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can use this really effectively to get some extra birds down. But yeah, it's so situational that
Yeah.
I think it can't. It definitely is not going to go any higher than D. But I
Yeah.
think it's not certainly not on the level of the birds we've looked at that have already got in F.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I have strong feeling about this. Like, I never have good game with the Moorhen, but I can see like in very specific situation, like, it can kind of shine. But again, three different food costs,
Yeah.
in desperate situation, you can kind of justify it. All right. So next we have the common nightingale. So basically, a hummingbird where you allow all player to gain one food of your choice. It only costs one food and very flexible. I think this goes straight to tier A here.
Yeah, no questions asked. I mean, like the blue throat we looked at earlier,
Yeah.
except cheaper. So obviously less points, but early in the game, are you really looking for the point value? Probably not so much. So yeah, just a chance to get foods in any habitat here, like the hummingbirds in the base game. Yeah, no complaints. Straight into tier A.
Yeah, like the flexibility for strategy either in grassland or wetland is just huge. So
Yeah.
all right, next one we have the common starling that allow you to tuck card by discarding food at the end of the round.
Yeah, this is kind of a tricky one.
Yeah.
I guess similar to the teal
Hmm.
powers we looked at before. I would say maybe with the carrion crow and the Seti's warbler. So I would say either C or D. I think it
Yeah.
comes down to those two. I can't really pick between the two. But yeah, it's not really a super strong power that you're going to look to activate early on because I think, especially that first round, you want to keep as much food as you can for playing
Hmm.
birds. This is really only kind of if you are desperate for that wetland bird, it's one food, you get it down, and you start drawing. So yeah,
Yeah. It definitely feel like it's above the common buzzard.
yeah,
I'm just not sure how far above. Is it gonna be in tier C? I think I feel comfortable putting it in tier D given
yeah.
the common buzzard. We also put it in D, so
Yeah, I think above the buzzard,
yeah.
somewhere in the near the top of D, but it is that kind of desperate situation, I think.
Alright. Next we have the common swift. Again, it's a teal power that allow you to discard food to tut card. But this time is one grub for 5 points. It's very good value for any bird, but it only live in grassland. So again, just in terms of utility in early game is almost none, except for like maybe winning like end of round go or something like that. Um, by that definition, I feel like it goes to D. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I've got this in F purely because it's grasslands only. I mean, it's like the Starling,
Yeah.
except The only thing really that was saving the
Yeah,
starling was the fact that you can put it in the
yeah,
wetlands in a real desperate situation. But I think, like you said, if it fits an end of round goal,
yeah,
if you know you're going to have loads of extra food and you can afford to use this,
yeah.
if it's your bonus card and you want to play it, then go for it. But yeah, this kind of bird to put in your grasslands early game that isn't actually generating extra resources or anything. This is not what you look to play.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make an argument to put in tier D just because again the value, and then just think about like extending early game to like maybe round two, like if you need a bird to cover second space in your grassland to unlock those extra eggs, like there's still some utility of this bird. So um yeah, let's just put it in bottom of tier D. I feel
We'll
like
leave it there.
yeah. All right. Next, we have the Corsican Nuthatch. So you get to draw one bonus card and then gain one food. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean it's not terrible early game. It's quite a
Mm-hmm.
tricky one.
Yeah.
See two of the same food, but you do get food back from the bird feeder, so that can really be quite helpful, I think.
Yeah.
This is really one of those extender birds, I would say. You look for a second bird in your forest just to push
Mm-hmm.
things out a bit more.
Yeah.
Kind of similar maybe to the Godwit that we looked at before, where you get a bonus card and a resource. So
Yeah.
I'd probably put it in C tier for that same
Yeah.
reason as the Godwit. Just get something going in the forest. It's not kind of a super desperate situation bird, but yeah, you're probably not going to play this in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah, I think it can work sometimes, like in situation where, like, for example, if you're generating food in the grassland and then you play this bird, you can gain some food to like accelerate your food generation. So
Right.
there is some utility. I can see it. Solid C tier.
Yep.
All right, what do we have next? We have Dunnock. So it's a teal power that allows you to lay eggs based on how many times your opponent activate their grassland. Again, this is a tricky one. Like, it's more or less a big investment for 1 point bird and potentially gaining a few eggs. But you can put it in the forest as your forest bird. I think it's kind of similar to the Golden Eye, so I want to say this is kind of in C tier for early game.
Yeah, I've got this one in C2 as well. I think
Yeah,
probably towards the bottom end. I mean, it's like the golden eye and it's a bit like the cuckoo. We put
yeah,
them both in C tier. So yeah, it's kind of again a bit like the nuthatch, that extension maybe in the forest, get you out to that 2 food generation.
yeah,
Maybe you get some extra eggs, which again are useful early game. So yeah, I think C tier for this one.
yeah. I think solid C tier over there. All right, we have kind of a tricky one again for you. We have the Eastern Imperial Eagles. So this is similar to Banali's where you can, pay the rodent cost by tugging card. But this only live in the grassland.
Yeah, thanks for
Ooh,
lining me up to do this
I
one
know.
again. I really appreciate
Totally
that. So
calculated.
but yeah, I mean, I think wherever we're going to put Benelli's, I think this goes slightly beneath that. It's obviously, like you said, the same power, but just slightly not as good in that you can only put it in one habitat in the grasslands. Normally,
Yeah.
you'd look to fill that up anyway as the game goes on. So I think I'd probably put this in A tier again.
Oh,
You're probably not going
wow.
to play it early game, but you definitely want to grab it. If it's in the tray, you've got to pick it up.
I know. I feel like this Eagles just really mess up the
They do.
methodology we have for
They
the
do.
tier list. It's like, how good it is. You really want to put it in top tier, but it really goes against like everything we just talk about. Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to play a grassland bird in early game and consuming all your bird, like, if it's based on like the methodology, like for me the ego probably go to like D or F tier. Like there's just no utility in the early game.
Yeah,
But
I
just
think it's tricky. It's like when we looked at the base game,
yeah,
when we looked at birds like the Atlantic puffin. I
yeah,
know we got a lot of comments from people saying, "Oh, you've got to pick up the puffin early game. That can't
yeah,
go in F tier."
yeah,
But I would say like puffin, I would sometimes grab that early game, but I'm not going to go out of my way to pick it up. Like turn one, if it's in the tray, I'm
mm-hmm,
probably not going to grab it. But Imperial Eagle, Benelli's Eagle, they never last until turn 2 in my experience. They're always picked up that turn 1. So yeah, maybe you're not going to play it early game, but you definitely get to grab it early game. So they do. I think they kind of need their own separate
Yeah.
section of the tier list because they, like you say, they just kind of break every kind of criteria that we're
Yeah.
trying to use here.
I should have an Eagles tier over there, but again, I think everyone just have a good understanding what
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
means here. Like, yeah, point scoring potential and based on the grabability in the early game, like, yeah, the Eagle will go in tier A. All right, next we have the Eleanor's Falcon. So this is a wetland bird where you roll the dice. If you get rolled, then you get to lay 1 egg. This is an interesting one. It's not a super reliable brown power, but you already get 6 points from 2 different bird, and if you can get that 1 egg, you are really happy in early game. I'm trying to see, does it justify going to the bottom of B tier? What do you think? It's
Yeah, it's
either
a
B or
difficult one.
C.
I think I'll probably put this one in C. I mean,
Okay.
when I was going through this list, I was kind of thinking
Yeah.
back again to the base game tier list, and you think about some of the predators from there.
Yeah.
And kind of, I think most of them went in either C or D tier. I think this is better than those. Like you said, you do get the egg. And
Yeah.
early game, I'd rather have an egg than a cash food.
Yeah.
So, there's that little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, benefit you can get. And obviously, 2 different foods. I mean, one of them's a rodent, but you can at least get something going. So. Yeah, not super desperate situations for this one. I think that keeps it out of D tier certainly, but I don't think it quite meets the level of the other B tier birds we've got.
Yeah. So I think I can agree with that. Now again I look at this. If I have a choice between the little bittern or the falcon. Actually, I don't want to make that decision, but but yeah, maybe I'll lean slightly toward the bittern if the tray is good. I can get extra cards. So all right, we'll put it in C tier. All right, next we have the Eurasian Collar Dove. So it's again another 2 power that allow you to discard food to tuck card. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think this probably just goes next to the common Swift.
Yeah.
It's that, similar kind of power. I mean, obviously you're getting 5 points still, but you're paying extra food. But the round end power itself is a bit more flexible. So for early game utility, very, very little. Like the Swift, it's going to depend on end of round goals or something like that. Yeah, you're not really going to look to play this, I think, otherwise in your grasslands.
Yeah. I mean, are you gonna disagree if I put it in F tier?
I mean, I'd want to put it in F tier, but
Yeah.
I want to put the common Swift in F tier as well. So I think they're similar enough that yeah, they probably go together, but I have got this one in F tier.
Okay, yeah, I think there's some differentiation. Like, I feel like the 2 food, definitely like
Yeah.
a bigger investment.
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep looking at this. Maybe I'll move the common Swift later or not. But again, like, I think we've talked about this in previous tier lists. Like, once you get into like the D and F tier, like, there's really just not that much differentiation. Like, they're just bad for early games, so no need to get too needy greedy. All right, next we have the Eurasian Golden Oreo. So this is a pretty interesting pink power that came off the European expansion, which allow you to gain food in between turn when your opponent activate the force. I have seen some good game with this bird. Again, the flexibility of gaining either a grub or a cherry is quite good, and then the star nest as well. But 3 food is definitely a huge investment in early game. Like, we're really gambling on this bird. But again, just thinking about like Wingspan, like bigger picture, like if you're playing like multiplayer game, obviously like with more player, this bird is really gonna shine. So I think it's between B or C. I kind of want to put it in B. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a tricky one. I mean, I've got this one in C, probably nearer the top end of C.
Yeah.
I think this is one where, I mean, we talked about this a bit when we were doing the previews of all the birds for the European expansion. I think this is one where I thought this was going to be a really, really good bird. Get extra food early game when your opponent gets food, and your opponent is going to spend turns getting food, so you're pretty sure of that. But just experience playing it. It's so easy to block this. It's so easy
Yeah.
for your opponent to get food in such a way that means that you don't
Yeah.
get any benefit from this. So
Yeah.
that can be really, really frustrating. And obviously, like you say, pink powers really scale well. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
you have a 5-player game, you're probably going to keep this all the time in your starting hand.
Yeah.
But in 2-player, not necessarily so. Yeah,
That's true.
it's just a big investment. I think that 3 food is really off-putting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking at the tier list, again, I'm looking back at the Woodpecker and the Eurasian Oreo. Like,
Mm,
at least for the Woodpecker, you have a little bit more control, like, because
exactly.
it's your own brown power. Yeah. The Oreo, like, your opponent can really delay gaining food if they need to or if they can afford it. So, yeah. But again, with bigger player, it has a lot of potential. So we can put it in C tier. All right, next we have the Eurasian Green Woodpecker. So another teal power that counts double towards end of round go.
Yep, and I think this is probably going to go alongside the Seti's Warbler that we
Yeah,
had a look at earlier. So yeah, same power. Again, same kind of restrictions really in terms of what end of round goals it's actually going to qualify for.
right.
But you can definitely get some utility.
Mm-hmm.
Second Forest Bird, maybe your first Forest Bird if you're desperate. And yeah, if it can get you a leg up in that first end of round goal, that's a bonus. But for the most part, this is kind of a desperate situation really when you play this.
Yep, not really looking forward to play this in early game. All right, next we have the Eurasian Hobby. So again, this is pretty much similar to the common buzzard. So you can play on top of another bird. This time you can pay a grub for that. So I'm just gonna put them together in desperate tier.
Yep, no complaints.
All right, next we have the Eurasian Jay. Again, a 3 food bird that allow you to steal a seed from another player. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not great.
It's not great. I think I was kind of tossing up between C and D.
Oh wow.
In the end, I went for D. Purely desperate situation.
Yeah.
I think if the power let you keep the seed, I'd
Mm-hmm.
put it higher up. I think that
Right.
could justify a B or a C.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have to cash it, you
Mm-hmm.
don't really care about cash for your own
No.
game. And that's all contingent on the fact that your opponent has to have a seed. And early game, they might not have a seed. They might spend it, or they might be spending turns getting cards instead of getting food. So yeah, just super, super situational. Again, with more players, you might get more luck, but I've never managed to get this bird to work.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Now you mention it. Like for the amount of food that you invest in it, it's really strange that there's a restriction that you cannot use the seed. And funny story, as I was looking at all the birds in preparation for this tier list, like Eurasian Jay is one of the 2 birds that I've never played after so many games in Wingspan.
Well,
So
that tells you everything you need to know.
exactly, like I almost just want to put it in F tier, but again, like sure, it lives in the forest. Like if you need a forest bird, sure, go for it. But it's just so strange with the food cost with all the restrictions. So bottom D here.
Yep.
All right, next we have the Eurasian magpie. So again, another teal power that allow you to cache food based on your opponent activation of grassland. Yeah, this gives me the collar dove vibe, and it only gives you 1 point. I feel like in many cases it's even harder to justify in early games. So I'm gonna put it all the way in F tier. What do you think?
Yeah, no complaints. I think like the other teal powers, mostly that we've looked at here, it's not generating resources, it's just getting points. So
Yeah,
early game, not too bothered about that. It's only going in the grasslands. It relies on other players that you have no control over.
yeah,
Yeah, not super exciting for an early gameplay.
yeah. All right, next we have the Eurasian Nutcracker. So you can massively cache grain in the forest.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. This is
Mm-hmm.
again one of those where I think my opinion of it has changed slightly over the course
Interesting.
of playing the game. So I think when I first saw it, I thought it was amazing. I was like,
Yeah.
5 points for 1 food. I get 5 caches a turn. Amazing. I'd probably have put it in A tier.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started playing with it
Yeah.
and really struggling with it.
Yeah.
And it was probably going, oh, now it's in C or D tier.
Yeah.
But there are some good there are some good opportunities here. I have had some really good games where, if you get that good food generation, you can really get something going.
Yeah.
On balance, it's probably in C tier, I think.
Yeah.
That one food, get the forest going. It's quite hard to build something purely around it, but I mean, if you can get some extra food and get some extra caches on this for points later in the game, then there's definitely some potential.
Yeah, I think, again, it's giving similar vibe to Chaffinch. It's one
Yeah,
food for four
exactly.
or 5 points for power that in theory is quite good, but you're not really gonna use it. Like, for example, in early game, like food is just so valuable. Like, you'd rather have those food to play bird than to cash it anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, I have seen some of those games posted where people have got like 50,
massive cash,
60
yeah.
cache food, and it's all centered around the Nutcracker. So
Yeah.
absolutely, it's potential, but I think those games tend to be like 1 or 2% of all games
Yeah.
with the Nutcracker. I think for the most part, it's kind of just that build up that forest, get something going. But yeah, on average, I think C tier is fine.
Yeah, it's just a solid filler bird. So
Yeah.
all right, next we have the Eurasian nuthatch. Again, this is similar to the coated, where you can gain a grain from supply and then cash it and use it later. Again, very solid forest bird, no question. This is gonna be in tier A.
Yeah, easy enough that one.
Yep. All right. Next, we have the Eurasian sparrowhawk. Again, this is similar to the eagles, where you can use card to pay for the rodent cost. You always get the same power.
I think there's one more, or maybe two, or so we'll see if
Yeah.
I get those as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is not a super easy one to rank.
Mm.
I've got this in C. I think
Yeah.
similar again to the Chaffinch and the
Yeah.
Nutcracker. I'd say early game slightly better
Mm-hmm.
because you can pay with cards, and I think in those situations where you've got a good wetlands, you're drawing lots of cards to be able to play this for free, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously you get the 4 points on the bird and then one for the tuck as well.
Yeah.
That can be really helpful just to kickstart your forest, or again as a filler bird, get something going. So yeah, it's not the kind of bird you grab straight away, but if
Yeah.
you can pick it up and you've got some spare birds to play it with, then yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it again, solid filler bird, like, good flexibility in early game if you need a forest bird. So yeah, we'll put in tier C here. All right, next, we have the Eurasian tree sparrow. So again, this is another pink power that allowed you to gain a grain when your opponent activate the forest. So let me see, where do we put the golden Oreo? Oh, I want to say this is definitely a tier below the Oreo, just because of, the restriction of only gaining C. Like, it's just so easy to block this power. What do you think?
Yeah, I got this in D as well for that
Mm-hmm.
that reason. I mean, when
Yeah.
we talked about Oriole, we talked about how easy it is to block. In this case, it's even easier because you
Yeah.
only get the choice of seed. So, yeah, I've had a number of games where I play this and then your opponent can see it. They know, okay,
Yeah.
well, when I'm gaining food, they're going to get a seed if I'm not careful. So, it's really, really easy to block that. And yeah, just so
Yeah.
frustrating to miss out on the free food there, particularly in the early game when it's so valuable.
Yep. I would still put it in top of D because,
Yeah.
in occasion where you can gain those seed, it's still very valuable.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Ooh, next one. We have an easy one for you. We have the European bee
Mhm.
eater. So you can reset the feeder and gain one grub.
Yeah, I think this one is pretty easy. So this for me
Yeah.
goes straight into A tier.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it is a little bit annoying that it's two worms, so you
Yeah.
can't necessarily play it straight away unless you're going to
Mm-hmm.
force it down. But yeah, once it's down, you're pretty likely to get the food on that reroll. And again, we talked about it with the blue throat and the nightingale, and obviously all the kind of similar birds in the base game. If you're
Yeah.
gaining food in the grasslands, you're doing well. So yeah, love to see this bird in the starting hand.
Yeah. For me, this is definitely top of A tier. Like the ability to gain food without giving your opponent free resource. Like I just have so many good game with the bee eater.
Yeah, definitely.
Great bird. All right, next we have the European goldfinch. So again, this is an interesting pink power from the European expansion where you get to tug a card from the deck whenever your opponent tug a card in between turn. This is a tricky one. Again, in terms of point scoring and countering your opponent engine is great. But it is 3 food. Like, can you afford to invest 3 food in early game for this? Just looking at this, I want to say in D tier. Is it too harsh? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is tricky.
Yeah,
Like you say, it's such a good counter,
yeah,
but it does so heavily depend on what your opponent's doing
yeah,
because you could easily play this early game and then they don't do any tucking and then you get nothing. So
yeah.
I have got this in C tier.
Mm,
I think it's so hard. I think there are occasions where this is going to be A tier or B tier because you see
yeah,
your opponent play. Like a chaffinch or a chiff chaff or a bush tit, and you know they're going to be doing lots of tucking. You want to get
yeah,
this down and get points. But yeah, in terms of early game tempo, it's not great because all it's doing is getting you points,
yeah,
rather than any sort of actual resource. So it's difficult. I think I would probably argue for C tier, but I can understand if you want to put it sort of higher end of D tier.
yeah. I think for me, it's just more of a, you're not generating like critical resources that you need early game. Again,
Mm.
like, overall, great bird to watch out for, in general, because there's just like so many tugging engine potential in Wingspan, and this is a good counter. But early game, yeah, a little bit lacking, and the 3 food investment is a little bit big. All right. So next we have the European honey buzzards. So at the end of the round, you reset the feeder and gain all the grub. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one, and
Yeah.
definitely is. It kind of depends on what your experience the first few times you played this bird.
Yeah.
And like, it's really easy to play this and get no worms.
Yeah.
Or you can play it and you reset the feed and you get 3 or 4 or 5 worms. So, um, I've got this in B tier.
Yeah.
I think B tier is looking quite empty at the moment, so it
Yeah.
does need filling up
That's
in any case.
okay. Yeah.
Not that that's enough of a reason to
Yeah.
put it there. But, yeah, I think early game, 2 different foods. It's a good filler bird, probably better than some of those ones in C tier. And then you get extra worms at the round end, so
Yeah.
that can really kickstart your second round with some extra food, get some birds down. So yeah, I like this power.
Yeah, I mean, this power is just like early game is where it really shine because that's when
Mm,
you need the grub, and
exactly.
it is a little bit of gamble. Like, you if you invest 2 food and did not get any back, like that's the worst feeling. So yeah, I've now that I'm looking at it, I definitely have the same feeling about it as I have for the little bit, and like it's
Yeah.
not great, but when it work out, it can kind of shine. So B tier.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have the European robin. So it's a 3 food forest bird that allow you to gain, 1 extra food that you already gained that turn. Again, it's one of those birds that allows you to gain extra food in early game, and you can play this straight away because of 3 food. By in theory, it should go into tier A, but my personal experience, I'm not the biggest fan. So I personally will put it in top of B tier, but I can also see it in bottom of tier A. Curious to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is a difficult. I think like
Yeah.
you, I think my first instinct is 3 different food and it gets you food in
Yeah.
the forest. I think that sounds A tier.
Yeah.
There are definitely some drawbacks. And again, for me when I was going through these birds, I was looking at the previous tier list and kind of thinking, what can this compare to? And there were a few birds that we did have kind of higher up, I suppose, in B tier.
Mm-hmm.
There are still those food gaining powers, but maybe you're dependent on a reroll, or you're only picking a certain food from the bird feed, or you're giving everyone a food. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's enough of an argument to drop it down to the top of B tier.
Yeah.
But there are situations where this can be really good because sometimes you need 2 fish for playing a black-throated diver or
Yeah.
something, and there's only one in the bird feeder, and so you could
Yeah.
use this to get 2. So it's very situational.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the time I'm going to keep this, but it definitely feels not as good as, for example, the bullfinch,
Yeah.
or the coltit that we looked at.
Yeah. Again, it's like you have to remember, like, if you keep the European robin in the starting hand, it costs 3 food. It really
Yeah.
limits you, like, you can't keep like more birds. And yeah, looking at this again, very similar vibe to the diver, like great power, but just because of the food cost, it just feel a little bit lacking. So I think
Yeah.
solid top of B tier here. All right, next we have a European roller for you. So
Am
it's
I
a
getting another sideways
I
bird?
know you have another sideway bird that go into the grassland. So
Excellent. Well, this should be pretty straightforward. I think I put this one immediately into F tier.
yeah.
Yeah, no real utility. I think again, maybe like the Blackbird, I think I might have only played this once.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was when I had Prairie Manager and Rodentologist, and
Yeah.
it hit an end of round goal. So, yeah, just really nothing I think that you can benefit from early in the game here.
Yeah. Not much. All right. Next we have the European turtle dove. So 2C, very flexible habitat, and at the same time very flexible when play power as well. So you get to draw a bonus card and then you can gain either food or egg or card. I quite like this bird. I feel like, either early, mid, or late game, I've always found some utility for this bird. So it's kind of similar to the tier of like Godwit and
Mm.
Nuthatch, but I'm wondering if the flexibility is enough to put it in B tier. I don't know. I think it's somewhere between B or C.
Mm. Yeah, I struggled a bit with this one as well. I mean, I've
Yeah.
got it in C tier, but I think
Mm-hmm.
definitely it's better than the nuthatch, for example. The same
Yeah.
food cost, but here you get flexibility in habitat and you get flexibility in resource.
Yeah.
I've used this a number of times. For an end of round goal, you might need an egg, and you can play this bird and you lay an egg, or there's something in the tray, you play this, you pick that bird up, and you save yourself a turn. So for tempo reasons, this can be really, really strong early in the game. I
Mm-hmm.
think if it wasn't two seeds, I
Mm-hmm.
could see it going in B tier, but I think
Yeah.
that's probably the only thing for me that does just hold it back because you do need those two seeds to play it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, looking at C tier again, I think it's a solid C tier bird here.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, next one. This is an interesting one. We have the Go Crest. So you get to play extra bird in the forest when you activate it. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like some of the other birds we've looked at, I've seen some really amazing
Yeah.
games. I've had some good experiences with this. I've played against it, and it's been really annoying
Yeah.
to play against. So I've got this in B tier. I think on balance,
Oh
that's where
wow.
I'd put it. I take it that's where not where you've put it.
No, but
But
keep
I think
going.
I think I think it's one food. You get your forest started. An early
Mm-hmm.
game, that's what you want. Cheap forest birds.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I think it's better than the filler birds in C tier because you can definitely get some utility.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that first round, getting some extra birds down and getting the forest built up, and that's what you want to do in the early game is get that forest built up quickly. So
Yeah.
it's situational, but I think the potential here is just huge from this power.
Yeah, I think my argument for this is like, I think the power only really is useful in very specific situation where you have like really good card sources and I don't know, just thinking about like filler bird, like do I want a filler bird that only give me 1 point or do I want to play other bird like the nutcracker or chaffinch that I can at least get like 4 or 5 points and still have some point scoring potential. I mean, don't get me wrong, like again, the power has a lot of like potential to accelerate the game, but I don't know if it's enough. Like just looking at overall games, like how often this get to be useful to justify like a B tier. I almost want to put this in D tier, honestly. So if
Well, we were going to get one eventually that we
I
disagreed
know.
on.
So I feel like if we take the average, like okay, fine, maybe you can put it in C tier, but
Mm.
yeah. But even then, I'll put it in very bottom of C tier.
I think you're. I think it is situational. I think
Yeah,
you can't make this work unless you have good card access. So
yeah,
that's one barrier. That's one hurdle you have got to
yeah.
get over. Uh, but the real strength of this is getting that forest set up early game. And when you think
Mm-hmm.
about early game,
Yeah,
for tempo reasons, if
yeah,
you're playing birds when you're gaining food, you're saving turns.
yeah.
You're getting those birds down. Maybe those birds get you points, but maybe they're going to get you extra resources next time you activate. So
Mm-hmm.
there is this kind of like compounding effect where
Yeah,
if you can use it multiple times,
yeah,
maybe a couple of times in that early game, get something set up really quickly,
yeah.
then you can benefit. But yeah, I can definitely see that there are some barriers to entry in terms of getting those like actual cards to be able to use it.
Yeah. Again, I think I'm convinced that it kind of have the same, vibe as the Nutcracker and Chaffinch. Like, like it's still a brown power after all. And if you can
Mm,
make good use of it, like it's pretty strong. I
yeah.
and I have had good game with the Gold Crest before, but just on average, like that's just like maybe a few games like over hundreds of games. So, you don't see people like just like, looking to grab this bird from the tray. Think about it that way in the early
Yeah.
games. So, I can be convinced it's in C tier.
Yeah, I think there is that kind of cluster of birds that are super situational where in the right circumstances they're A tier.
Yeah.
If in the wrong circumstances they're D or F. So
Yeah.
it's hard to kind of rank those with everything else being equal because it's so dependent on what else you've got. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think C tier, that's probably just going to be the place for those kind of birds here, I think.
Right. All right. So next we have the Great Crested Grebe. So, this is an interesting one. So you draw a card for each empty slot in your wetland. Again, Wingspan card draw is king, so this allow you to really see a lot of cards in the early game. But it does cost 2 fish, but you get a star nest. I feel like it's similar enough to the Black Throated Diver. So B tier, or do you want to make an argument otherwise?
Yeah, I think there is an argument for the bottom of A tier. I
Hmm.
think it's definitely one of the two. I think this is better than the diver for a couple of reasons. I think the extra egg spot is kind of critical early in the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to play this lay eggs. The starness can be helpful, but I think the power's better because
Yeah.
you're not restricted to resetting the tray,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that can be a big risk because you then leave that open for your opponent.
Yeah.
But also you're drawing extra cards. If this is your first wetland bird, you draw 4 cards and keep one,
Yeah.
which can really be valuable. So the 2 fish is annoying,
Yeah.
and I think that would be the one thing if I was going to put this in B tier that would kind of dock it down. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think there's an argument either way, but I feel like being generous here and putting it at the bottom of A tier.
Yeah. I think given like the card draw, and I think you make a very good argument about like not refreshing the tray, like and then potentially like seeing more cards in the early game. I think I can see it being in A tier or bottom of A tier.
Yeah.
All right. So next we have Great Tits. So very similar to a European robin with food cost, but this time you get to reset the feeder and gain any food in the feeder.
Yeah, and I think for similar reasons to the European Robin, this is probably high B tier.
Mm-hmm.
Again, kind of first instinct, you look at it, you think different food costs, get food.
Yeah.
Okay, it goes in A tier. But yeah, 3 foods is definitely difficult
Yeah.
in the early game. So you don't know what food you're going to get when you reset the bird feeder. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily going to be something that kind of suits your needs. So there is
Yeah.
that gambling element. So yeah, I'd put this just alongside the Robin. I think they're pretty comparable. I think for me, early game.
Yeah. But if you look at this comparison though, like don't you feel like, if you have the Grebe that's a better diver, don't you feel like the Great Tit is a better Robin in some way?
I don't know.
Just
I
not
think
good
they're
enough.
yeah. I find it hard to say one being better than the other. I
Yeah.
think they are just different.
Yeah.
So the great tit, you reset the feeder. So if the feeder's bad, the great tit's going to be better. But if
Mm-hmm.
the feeder's good and you want to get 2 of that food, then
Yeah.
the robin's better. So it's that situational aspect. I think they kind of both. I mean, I'll be honest. I get these two confused in the game because they're
Yeah.
so similar.
Yeah.
They occupy the same space in my head. So
Yeah.
I think for me, I would just put them next to each other.
Yeah. I think I can agree with that. Like now just thinking about like all the other way you can gain food that's in tier A, Great Tit
Exactly.
is like very solid and but yeah, probably top of B tier. All right, next. Oh, I have to do this really. We have
Yep.
the Greater Flamingo, where you get to tug card when you activate it based on the number of time your opponent activate the wetland. It's a 3 food cost. again, a very specific situation where your opponent is really running that wetland, you can make this work. But early game is a huge investment, and one X spots is also like, a problem because you can lay 2x on it. Like, is it that bad to make it into tier F, or can it at least be bottom of tier D? Yeah, this.
Well, I'll save you there because I've got it in F tier.
Oh, come on.
I don't know. I mean, like, there's desperate situations,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's situations where you have to play the flamingo.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we talked about situational birds before with the
Yeah.
gold crest and the chaffinch. This is one of those birds where even in the right situation, it still isn't really that good.
Yeah.
It's still just so difficult. I think I might have only played this maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
And that is like in the most desperate of desperate
Yeah.
situations when your opponent's already set up a wetlands,
Yeah.
and you can get some cards draw and obviously the tucks as well from it. So yeah, for me, there's no place for this in the early game.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, like, most of the time, even in desperate situation, maybe you just gamble for better bird than settle with the
Yeah,
flamingo. All right,
yeah,
we'll put it in top of F tier, like, for the slim possibility in very specific games. So,
yeah.
all right, next. Oh, it's really true. You always get the sideway bird. So,
This is rigged. This
I
is
know,
rigged.
it's interesting. So we have the great heron. So you play sideway in the wetland.
Yeah, this
Hmm.
bird, this has desperation written
Yeah.
all over it, and so for
Yeah.
me, straight into D tier.
Yeah.
I think I like this less than most people do.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think so. I'm not going to put it in F tier, but I think certainly sort of somewhere in D tier. Probably I would put it lower down, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just me. But yeah, it's such a desperate situation bird again. Two fish, really annoying.
Yeah.
And then even once you've played it, yeah, you're getting two cards, but it's that kind of when
Yeah.
played power, so you get no benefit from it. And yeah, just not the kind of bird you look to play, I don't think, early on.
That's true. Like, two food investment in a wetland bird that it really doesn't even improve your card draw that much, getting
No.
two cards. So yeah. D tier desperation. All right. Next, we have the gray leg goose. So another bird that counts doubles towards end of round goal, but it's 3 seed for 7 points. Like, I'm feeling this probably go to F tier because why bother in early game?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty straightforward F tier. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 3 seeds is just not good. And we talked about the power before with Seti's Warbler, just really, really specific. But yeah, this is just worse than that, purely from that food cost aspect.
Yeah. No place in early game.
Yep.
All right, next we have the Griffin Voucher. So it's a teal power that allows you to catch rodent based on the number of predators. So we have seen this before, but it's
Yep. So this
free.
is the same. Yeah, it's the same power as the Carrion Crow.
Yeah,
It's free, but it only goes in the grasslands. So
yeah,
yeah, I think just in terms of that early game, and when we're talking about trying to generate resources, this is not doing anything for you. So
yeah.
I would be inclined to put it in F tier
Mm-hmm.
purely from that aspect. Yeah, it can work. I have seen games where this has worked really well, the Griffin Vulture.
Yeah,
But yeah, just from an early game perspective, not really the kind of bird you want to go for.
yeah. All right. I feel like we have done this enough. I feel like we have keep putting grassland bird in F tier. It's really hard for me to justify putting the common swift in the
Mm.
D tier. I feel like the common swift has a similar vibe as the vouchers. Like, you might get great value, but it's just not good utility in early games. So I'm just
Yeah,
gonna put a lot of this grassland bird in the F tier. I
I
think
think I think that's the case though.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think when we combine this like in the base game tier list, like it might make sense too. Like, we have seen a lot of grassland bird in the base
yeah,
game that we just put in F tier.
exactly.
All right, next we have the hawfinch. So again, another forest bird that allow you to reset feeder and this time get a grain. Cost 2 grain. Again, every time you have a bird that allows you to gain extra food is good, but 2 grain investment. I want to kind of put it yeah, it's probably somewhere in B tier along with like the woodpecker and stuff like that. So what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got this in beta. I think
Yeah.
the most direct comparison probably the bullfinch,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just that step below because it's two of the same food and a slightly weaker power where you only get the choice of the seed from a reset, so you're less likely to get the food. So yeah, not as good, but still a solid power, like you say. Food in the forest is always nice.
Yep. All right. Next we have the Hooded Crow. Teal power, tuck cards based on the activation of your opponent grassland. 3 food.
Yeah, three
Tough.
food, three food is tough, and it's just so dependent on what your opponents do as
Yeah.
well. Again, like we looked at some of the other teal powers or the pink powers, you're relying on your opponent's actions, which does make for some uncertain value there. So I have got this in D tier. I think for
Yeah.
three food just makes it so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we actually talked about this a little bit on the server not too long ago, and kind of, what's the most tucks you've ever seen on a hooded crow? And
Yeah.
it's normally not that many. It's
Yeah.
normally in the single digits. So, even in a best case scenario, you might be getting 8 or 9 tucks from this,
Yeah.
which is obviously really good.
Mm-hmm.
But you've had to take the pain early on with that three food cost. So yeah, just not super useful. I don't think this one.
Yeah. I think, yeah, bottom of D tier, again, like the potential of getting some card cycle
Yeah,
is still useful. So, but
yeah,
the investment of food is definitely big. All right. Next we have house sparrows. Discard grain to tuck card. I feel like this probably go into the same tier at the Kolodov.
yeah.
So
I think
easy.
so.
All right, next we have the lesser white throat. So another teal part that allows you to lay eggs at the end of the round.
Yeah, so I'd say this one is definitely better than the red start that we looked at
Mm-hmm.
before. Obviously it's cheaper,
Yeah.
and it can go in the forest, so you get that filler bird aspect. And kind of when I'm thinking about that, I think about putting it in C tier again, kind of similar
Mm-hmm.
to these other filler birds.
Yeah.
I've definitely played this one more than the red
Yeah.
start, for example. And yeah, you get that as your second forest bird, then you can look to get 2 free eggs at the end of the round. So yeah, definitely some use, and obviously scales really well as the game goes on with that kind of power.
Yeah. I think it's kind of similar to Dunner in terms of value and utility.
Yeah.
So in the C tier. All right, next we have the little bustard. So you get to draw 1 bonus card and then either gain a card or an egg. So I actually have played a few games that find good utility of this bird in early game, especially the aspect of gaining 1 card. Like it can sometimes make a difference when you don't really have a strong wetland. So yeah, I think this definitely go into the solid C tier here.
Yeah, I think I mean I've got it in C tier as well. I
Yeah.
think you look at the turtle dove that we talked about before. Obviously, you don't get the choice of food, but still being able to pick up a card or being able to lay an egg. Sometimes you just need that one egg, and then you can play another bird in any of your habitats, and then get that extra value from when you take that turn. So yeah, like you, I've had some good experiences with this one. So yeah, I can see this working well in
Yeah.
C tier.
Yeah. In all honesty, I also have a very strong feeling about grabbing this card in early game if I see it. So,
Mm.
um, almost have a B tier feeling here, but I think C tier here, like along with other when play powers, feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, do you think? I mean, yeah. I mean, because
I think
before,
higher up in C tier. I think it's
right?
it's better. Like I said, I think it's better than the turtle dove and the godwit and the nuthatch because it is that two different food.
Yeah.
So obviously it can only go in the grass, and so you don't get that filler bird
Yeah.
aspect that you would look for getting that extra bird in the
Yeah.
in the food or the card drawing. But yeah, I think it can work, and I would say, like you, I've probably played this more
Yeah.
than the other similar birds in that early game in particular. But yeah, C tier, but slightly higher up. I think
All
feels
right.
about right.
That's fair. All right. Next, we have the little owl. So allow you to steal rodent from another player to cash it.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking stealing food to cash, I'm just reminded of that Eurasian J. So
Yeah.
um, I think probably it does go alongside. I mean, it is slightly better just in the fact
Mm-hmm.
that it only costs 2 food. So
Yeah.
If you're in that desperate situation of playing it, you are at least saving a food. But in lower player counts, you're probably just not going to get any sort of value from this.
Right.
Again, you're caching. You're not even getting to steal the food and add it to your supply.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really does kind of limit the value, I think, from this kind of power.
Yeah, it's more or less a two food desperate filler bird feeling for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
And is this true? Is this one of the bird that was supposed to be a predator in the physical game, and they, in the digital, they
Yeah,
did not implement that? So
yeah, I'm not sure because I think it's one of those that feels like a predator
yeah,
power, um, but you're stealing, so it's not really.
yeah,
It's I don't think it's like the same as looking at the
yeah,
deck or rolling the dice. So yeah, if it was a predator, I think you could maybe see some more use, working with the falconer bonus, but it's just not really there.
right. All right, we have another sightway bird. This time it's the long-tailed tit. That only costs two food and it has a star nest. So where do we put the other sideway bird? Does it justify going to higher than D tier? I want to stay. It's still D tier. Just for the fruit cost and investment. But I don't know. What do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I have got this one in D tier, so
Yeah.
I think we put the blackbird in F tier, so that's the other forest one.
Yep.
This is definitely a tier above blackbird, but I think no more than that. Like you say, two different foods, so you can at least play it turn one.
Yeah.
And the only times I think I've played this bird has been turn one to set up a couple of turns getting food, and you're getting two food each time, so some value there. And like you say, star nest, if you hit that with an end of round goal, and get some value from that, then it works. But yeah, D tier, it's that desperate situation again.
Yeah. Very filler bird, strong filler bird, strong feeling here.
Yep.
All right, next. Ooh, this is gonna be an interesting one. So we have the Moltoni's Wobbler. So a teal powers where if you use alt four type of action, you get to play another bird at the end of the round. So how do you value this?
Yeah, this is such a hard one to value.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we disagree here. But
Okay.
for me, I like these birds, so I've got it in B tier.
Mm-hmm.
I think on balance, it is the kind of bird where if it's in the tray
Mm-hmm.
and I've got the kind of feeling that it's going to work, it's
Mm-hmm.
one of those kind of vibe birds. I think you kind of see in your setup. Okay, I'm not going heavy on one habitat. I've
Mm-hmm.
got some access to the other resources. I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm going to be taking all the actions.
Yeah.
Then I can get some use out of this early game. So yeah, it is the kind of bird where if it's in the tray, I'm going to look to pick it up.
Mm.
And I think for me that is enough to get it into B tier.
Yeah. I think this bird has a lot of potential. Again, like we have seen, like teal power like this. If you can couple a few like teal power, you can really generate a lot of points and accelerate the game. But again, it's kind of situational. Like you gotta have good sources of food and card to make it work. Yeah, I mean, I can see it being in the low of B tier just in terms of like, it is gonna shine in early game and even into
Yeah.
late game if you have a good setup. So, yeah, I'll be fine to putting it in the bottom of B tier. If not, like for me personally, probably go into somewhere in like the C tier. For me, we'll see as we move along.
Yeah.
All right. Next one, we have the Montagu's Harrier. So we have another when play power that you play on top of another bird, but it go into the grassland. So I think this probably solid F tier here, like just no early game utility.
Yeah. No complaints from me there.
Yeah. So all right. Next. All right. Oh. this
Here we
is
go.
this gotta come at some point, isn't it? So we have the Mute Swan, so you can play in the wetland and then tuck up to three cards from your hand and draw one. All right, say your piece. Go for
Yeah,
it.
I'm glad I get to go first here on this one. So I am definitely going to make the case for A tier here.
Mhm.
It's the kind of bird where if it's in the tray, you want to grab it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so powerful and it's so flexible,
Yeah.
and you want to be building up your wetlands anyway. So
Mhm.
you get this power down, you build up your wetlands, you get extra tucks, you get points, you see extra cards. It just scales so well, but I think even in that early game, the 3 food cost is going to be the sticking point. But
Yeah.
I think you can justify that and just set up your wetlands with this. It is such a good bird.
Yeah. All right. I mean, to save myself from all the flame and hate comments, I mean, I have to agree that it is in A tier. Like, if people see in the tray, it's hardly. Did you just breathe a sign of relief there?
Yeah, this was the most stressful bird I think for me to come to in this tier list. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we could agree.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like after so many games, like yeah, I have enough experience with the bird that I can see it being in tier A, like people always looking forward to grab this bird. But at the
Yeah.
same time, the 3 food is a big investment, like compared
Mm.
to other like tugging engine bird, it's not as great. So I would say, I'll put it towards like maybe bottom or mid tier A here.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when I was looking at this again, like with the other ones that we've looked at through this tier list, kind of looked back at the base game and thought,
Yeah.
okay, those kind of tuck and draw style wetland birds, where
Yeah.
did they go? The sort of the tree swallow, the ring-billed gull, that type, they all went in B tier. And I
Oh
think the
wow.
mute swan is just that step above, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting the extra points. I mean, it's that one extra food over all those birds, but you just get so much extra value, I think.
Yeah.
By starting with this. So yeah, I think that for me, it does go in A tier, but yes, somewhere on the lower end, I
Yeah.
think is fair enough.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that the ring bill goal is B tier, now.
I think it was higher in B tier, but
Okay, that's
where
fair.
eventually we'll combine these 2 tier lists, and
And
then
we
we
might
can
make some movement.
we can make some movements at some point. Yeah.
All right, next we have the Northern Gannet. So it's an interesting predator. So you just roll all the dice that's not in the feeder and tuck or catch all the fish. All right, this definitely remind me of the Eleanor Falcon, in some way, but it costs 2 food and only 1 egg spot. Actually, I think this gotta be in D tier. It's just like super desperate. How do you feel?
Yeah, I've got this in D tier.
Yeah.
Again, looking back to the tier list we did before, kind of most of those 2 food predator powers for the
Mm-hmm.
wetlands, they went in D tier.
Yeah.
Now, when the expansion first came out, and you look at this power, you think, oh, now you
Yeah.
roll all the dice, and
Yeah.
you get as many fish as the dice you're rolling, and oh, I might be getting 2 or 3 fish a turn when I'm cashing on this. Once you play with it a few times, it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
So the kind of added value you get over those kind of base game hunters is not really there. And yeah, the 2 fish and the 1 egg spot, I think keeps it in D tier for me.
All right. No thanks. Again, we didn't arrange this, but you got another one here, the
Wow.
Northern Goshawk. So similar power as the Eagles. So where do you
Yeah.
put this?
So, I mean, pretty straightforwardly, we've got the other 2 Eagles up in A tier or potentially S tier. We've got
Mm-hmm.
the Sparrowhawk in C tier. I
Mm-hmm.
think this one sits in between the 2, so I have got this in B tier.
All right.
I think it's just that step above for
Yeah.
me. The Sparrowhawk, it is the kind of bird you're not going to necessarily go out of your way to pick it up, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a free bird in your forest. It's that kind of, you get 5 points and 2 extra tucks as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend those extra turns drawing cards, so I like this one a lot. I think I think there's enough to put it in what is still very empty looking B tier.
Okay. I mean, honestly, for me personally, I want to put it in C tier along with the Sparrowhawk because in a lot of my game experience, it because it because you want to tuck 2 card, like unless you have a really strong like wetland engine, like it just ended up consuming your cards and like ended up like forcing you to like spend more turn drawing cards. I don't know, like I just have a few bad game where I hold on to this thinking of playing it, but then ended up paying the opportunity cost of like spending my cards and going back to the wetland. So I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
feel very strongly about this bird. At the same time, like all this hawk and eagles are messing up with the tier list, so it's fine. We'll just put it in B tier.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I I can definitely I can see the kind of the points you make about
Yeah.
okay, it does need extra cards. I mean, I almost see this as a bit of an insurance.
Yeah.
You know, if you do have something in your wetlands that lets you draw cards, this allows you to spend that extra turn drawing cards because you can think of it as well. If I draw good cards, that's great. That's what I'm looking for. I can keep those. If
Mm-hmm.
I draw bad cards, well, they're just going to get effectively used as food here. So
Yeah.
you've not. I feel like when you're spending those turns drawing cards to use this, you're not wasting turns because well, you would have had to spend a turn getting the food to play it anyway, and
Yeah.
this way you're getting extra points. So there is definitely that bit of extra utility, but like you say,
Yeah.
it's kind of not. It's not so much about the early game benefit because you're not getting extra resources. It's more just about saving food and getting that bird down a little bit quicker.
Yeah. I don't know. Looking back at tier B again, I don't know. I can't. I really don't feel like I want to put in tier B now because just look at all the birds that we have here.
Yeah.
Like they each have a little bit of utility, and it's pretty good. And Goshawk is mostly just points, and really it's only like maybe 2 points above the Sparrowhawk. Like I feel like
Yeah.
that's hard to justify a tier above, so we'll move it down.
I can live with that.
All right. Next, we have the Parrot Crossbill. Oh, this is a very expensive forest bird that costs 3 grains, and then, you get some grain in return. This is giving me strong, desperate situation vibe. And even still, like 3 grain, it's just so hard to play in early game. Like, does it drop it all the way to tier F? Like, I feel like it's almost have the why bother kind of vibe. How do you feel?
Yeah, yeah. I think why bother is a good way to kind
Yeah.
of look at it. I think there is just enough
Yeah.
for me to keep it out of F because it does have a useful brown power.
Yeah.
That you can always, you're guaranteed benefit from it. It's
Yeah.
not a re-roll and see what I get, or if there's
Mm-hmm.
something in the feeder, you're always getting a seed,
Yeah.
and so you can at least rely on that. But yeah, it's painfully expensive.
Yeah.
It's not a great power, but I have played this one at least, maybe a couple of times. Probably the same as the Eurasian Jay, to be honest, where it's next to at the moment. So I think they're probably about equivalent
Yeah.
for me in detail there.
All right, I'm fine with that too. Again, like if you have to gain food to play this bird in early game, you're already losing so much
Exactly.
tempo. So, but in
Yeah.
the situation where you're gaining free food or some other way, like the brown power consistency is pretty good.
Yep.
All right, next we have the red kite. So another predator that play on another bird on top of another bird, but it costs 2 food. Does it move it to tier F, or do you think it still keep in tier D?
It's so difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
we looked at the buzzard and the hobby, and kind of we talked about the desperate situation. You
Yeah.
have that one rodent food cost, and you play it down in any habitat. But yeah, the fact that this is 2 foods,
Yeah.
obviously, I think early game, like the other two, you're not going to use the power itself. You're just going to play
Yeah.
it as that filler bird in the most desperate of desperate situations.
Yeah.
So bottom of D tier, I think there is still something there that,
Yeah.
that keeps it out of there.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it fit well with all the other
Mm.
desperate filler bird here.
Yep.
All right. Next, we have the red knot. So you draw 1 bonus card and then draw 3 cards. So this is obviously similar to, what was that?
The Godwit.
The Godwit, but different
Yeah.
food costs. So how do you value this?
Yeah, it is a tricky one to make the comparison. I think that obviously the power is the same, but
Yeah.
3 worms in the early game
Yeah.
can be really, really tricky to get hold of. So
Yeah.
I would almost be tempted to dock it completely down to D tier for
Yeah.
that, just because it's just so expensive. Yeah, it's certainly not in the early game. It's not as good as the Godwit for that reason.
Yeah. It is really hard. Again, like unless you have some like co-op going on, like early game,
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
just hard. But again, like the 3 card draw, like sometimes can be game changing. So
Yeah, definitely.
all right, next we have the redback stripe. So a grassland bird that allows you to steal warm from your opponent. I think this have a strong F tier vibe here. So
Yeah.
all the way down here. Doesn't matter where.
No complaints.
All right. Next one, this is a tricky one. So we have the red
Mm.
leg partridge that allow you to lay 1 egg on each bird in the column. So potentially up to 3 eggs activation.
And I think you'd probably agree with me if I call this one situational.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
so for that reason, probably is going to go alongside those other situational ones in tier C.
Yeah,
It's one of those. If you can get it down round one,
yeah,
it's so valuable
yeah.
because you're getting, you might be getting, 3 eggs from that one activation, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cost you 3 seeds to get it down. And if you're spending those 3 seeds on this bird instead of getting another forest bird down or getting your wetland set up, it's so difficult to justify that. So
Yeah.
it's not really an early game bird,
Mm-hmm.
but it can sometimes work in a certain situation.
Yeah. Again, like just thinking about early game value, like do you really want to invest on a 3 grain bird in the grassland? Like does it like does it more like in the tier D, or do you really feel strongly about C tier? I mean, I get that it has potential with the right setup, but again, 3 grain for a 1 point investment in early game is really hard to justify unless you have very specific setup that you're looking for.
It is hard. I mean, I think the only reason for me why I look at C tier is just because again, it's like the situational aspect that we talk
Mm-hmm.
about with some of those other birds. If you have the food access, or someone has got a hummingbird and is giving free food away, and you can get this down, it's probably A tier because you're just getting so many free eggs from
Yeah.
the activations, and it has loads of space itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, D tier is for me like, okay, if you're really desperate,
Yeah.
you don't really go to this bird in desperation.
Yeah.
It's like a binary. It's either A or F.
Yeah.
So kind
All
of
right.
just it has to go somewhere. So it sort of goes in the middle, I
All
think.
right. I'll put it in the average like C tier here. I guess another good point to point out is that like with this bird, sometimes even if you only get 2 eggs, it's still
Oh
quite
yeah,
valuable. Like you don't
yeah,
you don't really need to get 3 eggs to justify it in many games. So
yeah. I mean, I think for me, you talk about early game value here. I think the value it adds is saving turns laying eggs,
that's
because
true.
if you spend a turn laying eggs, you might get 4 or 5 eggs. Well, you probably would have had to lay eggs twice to do that. So now you've got an extra turn. You can
Mm-hmm.
spend that doing something else. That's kind of where you get this value.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you do have to pay a lot up front to get that.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Next, we have the Ruff. So it's a teal power that allow you to, tuck 3 cards from your hand and then draw the same number. This is really strong in many games. Like I have had many good game with this bird because of the card draw. At the same time, you are like cycling card and making points. Just because of that, I feel like this gotta go in A tier, right? Like
Yeah,
maybe, yeah, somewhere mid to
yeah.
bottom A tier.
Yeah, I mean, I've got this in A2 as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of different, I think, to the other A tier birds in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that it's not generating resources, right?
Yeah.
It's not. You're not gaining cards. You have to have cards to tuck.
Yeah.
But just based on experience, this card goes more often than not. If it's in the tray turn one, it's going to get
Yeah.
picked up. If
Yep,
someone
that's
picks it
true.
up from the deck, they're going to keep it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to play this with 2 food, spend a
Mm-hmm.
few turns drawing cards, and you have that insurance again of, well, if they're not great cards, that's fine because I'm going to tuck them at that round end
Yeah.
and pick up some extra ones. So yeah, just exactly the kind of bird I think that you look for early in the game. This one.
Yep, the card cycle is very valuable there.
Yeah.
All right, next we have the Savi's Wobbler. So you draw 2, but your opponent get to draw 1 from the deck.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty easy A tier, to be
Yeah.
honest. This kind of gives me strong vibes, similar to Sandpiper and the Snipe in
Mm-hmm.
the base game. I think those are both in B tier, but this is just that cut above. You're getting 2 cards.
Yeah.
They don't have to be from the deck. Obviously, you're giving some to your opponent, but you kind of make peace with that because you're getting 2. And yeah, 1 food, such a strong power.
Yep. Very strong brown power, very solid A tier. All right, next we have the short-toed tree creeper. So this allows you to play extra bird in the forest. So it's similar to the gold crest that we talk about, but this costs 2 food, and you have to discard egg. Again, like I already didn't feel very strongly about the gold crest. Like I almost want to drop this to D tier, but I'll be fine if you want to put it alongside with gold crest. So how do you feel?
No, I think this is definitely worse than the gold
Yeah,
crest. I think it is worth docking it down a tier.
yeah,
The 2 food, like you say, is a real frustration.
yeah.
And just in general, paying eggs, I think there are some situations where that's better.
Mm-hmm.
But eggs are always good. Eggs are always the same.
Yeah,
But not all cards are the same. It's
yeah,
it's so much easier to use the gold crest by drawing really bad cards and then discard those. So it's not as good as a gold crest, but in some very
yeah.
specific situations it works. But early game, not so
Not so
much.
much. All right. Next, we have an interesting one. We have the snow bunting. They allow you to tug card in between turn when your opponent tug, but this time you have to tug from your hand. So
Yeah. So similar power to the goldfinch that we looked at before,
right.
but much much better, I think.
Yeah.
So I've got this one in A tier.
Hmm.
Just purely 2 foods, you put it in the wetlands, you're pretty safe, I think, in getting some tucks on this. But even if you don't, if you play early, if it puts your opponent off tucking,
Mm-hmm.
then you kind of have gained some sort of tangible value from that.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those. Again, it's a bit like the rough. If it's in the trade turn one, someone's going to pick it up more often than not.
Yeah. I have to think a little bit about this. I mean, the rough comparison is good, because you are getting card cycle and you're making points. But I feel like with rough, it's more predictable because it's up to you whether you have cards in your hand to tug. For snow bunting, if your opponent does not have any tugging bird, it can be kind of tricky. But 2 food is easy to play in the wetland. For me, it's definitely somewhere between like bottom of tier A or
Mm.
top of tier B. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when I kind of look at this and I'm thinking, we've got snow bunting in A and
yeah,
goldfinch in D. That feels a bit strange,
yeah,
but because obviously they are quite similar powers. But I do think the bunting is a much better power, and an early game in particular.
yeah.
Um,
It's the card cycle
it's the
that's
card
like,
cycle. Card cycle. We talked about this a million times. It's so valuable,
yeah,
especially in the early game. You're going to pick up bad cards, so you want to turn those into good cards. This just gives you that opportunity to do so. So yeah, again, it's going to get picked up more often than not if it's in the
yeah.
round one tray. So for me, that's enough to put it in A tier.
Yeah, I don't feel like A tier is a hot take here, so I'll
No,
leave it there.
no, definitely not.
All right, next we have the Snowy Owl. So when play, you get to draw a bonus and then gain either a card or an egg. So this is similar to the Little Bustard, but it costs 2 rodent. Again, I have had good utility with this bird before. It's just the food cost is a little bit tricky, but gaining,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the food cost I think is what kind of really holds us back. So I think
yeah,
it's probably pretty reasonable to put it in a similar area as the
yeah,
turtle dove and the godwit and all of those.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
getting the bonus card and then either a card or an egg. So some utility, but yeah, getting 2 rodents can be quite tricky, I think, early on.
All right. Moving on, we have the Squecko Heron. So you get to draw 1 face-up wetland bird. So I think this is probably the same tier as the Little Bitten, the common
Yeah,
Little Bitten here, because it's just very similar power.
yeah,
Not the greatest, but sometimes that's what you you have to live
exactly,
with.
exactly. Yeah, you take it.
You take it. All right, here you go. I'll let you take this one.
Thanks.
The Teclis Lark, so I don't even want to describe the power.
Oh, well, I don't know about you. I was going to put this in A tier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just getting those extra eggs early on is no. I'm not even going to carry on. Yeah, this can go in F tier.
Yeah,
I think again, I might have played this once, maybe twice at a push, but definitely early game. No, this
no
is not the one.
place. Yeah.
Nope.
All right. Next, ooh, this is also kind of interesting. So we have the white stork that allow you to, refresh the tray and then pick up one card, one new face-up card, and you can go to the grassland. Hmm,
Where's it gonna go?
where is it gonna go? I mean, it gotta be like either S or A. So the question is it good enough to go all the way to S tier?
Mm,
That's the question here.
yeah. Well, I think like when we talked about the Benelli's Eagle, if you've got to compare it to those S tier birds that we're used to in the base game, is it as good as a Franklin's Gull or a
Mm-hmm.
Killdeer? Probably not. Not quite. It's almost
Really?
as good. I would say
Mm-hmm.
almost as good. If we're looking early game, I'd definitely rather have one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
I think the real advantage of the Stork is that it has that larger window of opportunity to play in because
Yeah.
it's worth more points. So, you're not going to play a Killdeer round 3 because it's only
Mm-hmm.
worth 1 point, but you might play a White Stork because it's 8.
Yeah.
That's really where the strength comes in. But yeah, I mean, I think it's no doubt that it's top of A tier again. If it's in the tray, someone's going to grab it. If it's in the
Yeah.
starting hand, you're going to play it. You're going to use the eggs. You're going to get real good utility from this power.
Yeah. But again, it's seeing 3 cards though and not costing any egg. You don't think that's enough to justify it to be the same tier as
I I don't think so for me. I don't
okay.
think that they're not as good. One of the big things is that you don't get to pick up birds from the tray. If there's something in the tray that you like, you've got to use your wetlands. You can't use the white stalk, and that is such a drawback. I think that yeah, for me that's really what holds it back from being on that same level as a Kildare or Franklin's goal.
Yeah, that is a good point. And at the same time, because of the 2 egg space, it can be kind of
Mm,
tricky to start with white stork because your egg
yeah,
is gonna fill up very quickly, and you already like invest 3 food in it, so you better hope you get a good forest bird. So, all
yeah,
right, very top of A tier for sure. Like I would say like this is probably gonna go with like the wood duck, right? It's like those like S
yeah,
plus tier.
yeah. Feels like that kind of region.
All right. So next we have the white wagtail. So again, it's the teal power that allows you to play extra bird when you use 4 type of action. So this is similar to the Motoni's wobbler, but it costs 2 grub. It's just slightly
Mm.
difficult to get down. So do we dog a tier because of that?
It's tricky. I think it's worse because of the food cost, but it's better because it can go in the wetlands. And so
Yeah.
getting that wetlands started or maybe getting that filler bird in the second column,
Mm-hmm.
that is useful. And obviously with these kind of powers, you need to be gaining food anyway to use the power. So actually
Mm-hmm.
sometimes having that extra turn to get the second worm, you're gonna have to do that anyway. So yeah, I think there's another one we'll come on to. I think that trying to differentiate between these kind of similar powers is quite
Yeah.
difficult. I think they all have their pros and cons, but kind of on balance,
Yeah.
they're all pretty well balanced out, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, looking at this, I'm just a little bit worried that we might be overselling this teal power a little bit.
Mm.
Just reflecting again, like, you really gotta have a good food source and eggs and cards to utilize this. So, um,
Yeah, but I think early game, that's where you can get the most value from it
mm-hmm.
because it's easier to use all the actions. And
Yeah.
actually, often in that early game, you're probably going to spend at least 2 or 3 turns getting cards and 2 or 3 turns getting food. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you, it's one of those birds you have to plan basically your whole
Yeah.
game around it. And so, if you can do that, if you can successfully plan and make use of it, it could arguably be A tier, but it's
Yeah.
because of that restriction I think that is going to hold it back. But yeah, if you can plan and if you can, like you say, it's required to get the cards and get the food to use it. But
Yeah.
um, to get those extra birds down
Yeah.
in the first and second round for free
Yeah.
to then use throughout the rest of the game, yeah, there's just so much value there.
Yeah, again, potential is great, but in reality, I just find that I'm always like 1 or 2 resources short to really make good use of it. But we'll put it in lower B tier for now. All right. So we have white-backed woodpeckers. So simple, one food, you gain one food from the big bird feeders. So this feel like a very solid A tier here. No
Yeah,
question.
I, no question. I think it goes somewhere near the top right.
Yeah.
It's basically like the red start that
Mm-hmm.
that we had in the previous tier
Mm-hmm.
list, but it's even better because it's cheaper. So
Yeah.
just that one food, and then you get anything from the bird feeder. Yeah, this is I would say the best forest bird
Yeah.
that is in the European expansion.
All right. Great accelerator. All right, next we have the white-throated dipper. So in this case, you discard all face up and draw a new one. So again, this is very similar to the grebe and the diver that we have seen, but it costs two different foods. So
Yeah, I think for me that's enough to put it in A tier.
yeah.
Just really strong power, loads
Mm-hmm.
of X spaces, like I say, two different foods. You reset the trade, draw new cards. This is what you want, I think, in the early game. Get those extra cards, see lots of cards. Yeah, no complaints.
Solid. All right, next we have the Wilson Storm Patrol. So this is the same power as the Greed, but it costs three food.
Mm,
A little bit tricky here.
definitely tricky. I think the two fish really kind of is what's going to hold this back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one egg space. So maybe similar to that black threaded diver,
Mm-hmm.
kind of near the top of B tier. So
Yeah.
really still a good bird, but just kind of quite difficult to get down, I think.
Yep. All right. We come to the very last bird from the European expansion. So we have the yellow hammer. So this is, similar to what we have seen before. You get to play extra bird at the end of a round. So I would assume you would go to the same tier as the wagtail then.
Yeah. I think, like I said before, for me, they kind of have their pros and cons, but they're all broadly the same. So um, yeah, I think they all sit well together there at the bottom of B tier.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. We did it. We have.
Oh,
I know. It has been an interesting tier list here to rank some of this bird, but we did it. Here we go. We have the tier list from birds from the European expansion. How do you feel about this tier list overall?
yeah, I think it kind of is pretty well balanced. B tier definitely looking sort of a little bit empty, but plenty of those A tier birds that you want
Yeah.
to see, right? There's plenty of good brown powers that are going to get you extra cards or extra food.
Yeah.
We've got the teal powers and the pink powers in there as well. So yeah, I think hopefully this is going to be useful and kind of give a good overview and a good flavor of
Yeah.
the different kind of relative strengths and weaknesses of the birds we've got.
Right. Yeah. I mean, looking at this tier list, I think that's very little question about the birds in A tier. They're just very solid and very strong. Like, the line between say like B and C tier or C and D tiers are always going to be blurred because they're just very close. But at the same time, like F tier is another one that's just like very clearly F tier when
Yeah,
it comes to like early game. Like there's very little question about it. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, again, like let us know what are your thoughts about some of this bird. Leave it in the comments, and at the same time, make sure you head over to Flan's channel, Winging It, as well to check out more Wingspan content. And as always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Wingspan content. I'll see you next time.